Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with Mr. Julio Ribeiro, top cop in Mumbai, sometimes also known as Supercop, and Neeraj Kumar, former Commissioner of Police of Delhi Police. Welcome, gentlemen, to ThePrint, to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is a new property of ThePrint called ThePrint Debates, where we discuss the most important issue of the day, and what better than to talk to both of you about the charge sheet that the Delhi police has just come out with less than 24 hours ago, in which 15 people so far have been charge sheeted. There's already a lot of controversy over it because of these 15 people, none of the three BJP MPs who had made several statements, some of them which were very provocative, but none of these, Kapil Mishra, Anurag, Thakur, and Pravesh, Verma, none of these three people have been charge sheeted so far. So your first comments, Mr. Ribeiro.
Well, it's difficult for the Delhi police to really take the step to do what is right because I've never come across a thing like this where people have spoken in such a obviously provocative manner and nothing else, nothing has been done about it. I mentioned in one of my articles also that if they were Muslims or leftists, the government would have put them in for sedition. And here are people who are saying, do this, shoot them, kill them, and nothing else. Nothing is happening. I'm sorry about it, but the Delhi police obviously don't have that amount of guts to register the offence. At least the offence should have been registered. That would have put a sword of Damocles over their heads. But nothing of that sort was done. I know that wherever I worked earlier, if a thing like that had happened, at least the first thing we would have done is a provocative speech and we would have registered the offence at least.
Strong words from Mr. Ribeiro. Mr. Neeraj Kumar, your first comments on the Delhi charge sheet, the Delhi police charge sheet.
With the utmost regard to Mr. Ribeiro, who is a most esteemed senior of mine, and he was so kind to me. He came to my book launch. He was the chief guest. He gave a short speech. So I am actually quite embarrassed to even open my mouth in front of him. But nonetheless, what I'll say is that there have been a number of speeches, not only of the three that we are referring to again and again. Mm-hmm. Jyoti, you would recall in Ramlila ground, during the Bharat Bachao rally, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi made a speech in which she said, समाज और देश की जिंदगी ऐसा वक्त आता है कि उसे इस पार या उस पार का फैसला लेना पड़ता है. I have a number of speeches. अपनी कमर कस लो, आज जिस दौर से हमारा देश गुजर रहा है, हर तरफ अन्याय है. यह हमारी जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि क्रूरता जो कि भारत में हो रही है को रोकें. And then it goes on to say, आज वो कैब लाए हैं, कल वे कह सकते हैं कि मस्जिदों में कोई अजान नहीं होगी, कोई माइक नहीं होगा. एक दिन बाद वे कहते हैं कि कोई भी व्यक्ति दाढ़ी और टोपी के साथ नहीं होगा, औरतें बुर्के में नहीं होंगी. बहुत हो चुका. जब मोदी और शाह 3 तलाक लाए तो उन्होंने हमारी चुप्पी को कायरता समझ लिया. निर्णय न तो अब कोर्ट पे लिया जाएगा और न ही संसद में, बल्कि अब सड़कों पर लिया जाएगा.
But Mr. Neeraj Kumar, surely...
No. What I'm trying to say is that it is not as if only one party leaders were making such provocative speeches. Mm-hmm. There were various speeches from the other side as well. I mean, if Delhi police were to register a case with respect to the three that we are referring to again and again,
yeah,
they had to register cases in respect of all of these. I don't want to name them, but Jyoti, you know who I'm referring to. These are presidents and, senior leaders of the opposition party. पहला चरण मनु स्मृति का कार्यान्वयन होगा, इत्यादि. So they're
right.
Very, yeah.
Right. Mr. Ribeiro, I don't know if you heard what Mr. Neeraj Kumar just said. He talked about the opposition, the Congress.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and how it's not as if the three BJP leaders in question, Anurag Thakur, although his statements, you will admit, Neeraj, were quite provocative, where he said "Goli maro" to the audience that he was that he was addressing as well, referring to the protesters in various parts of Delhi. So, Mr. Ribeiro, what do you make of Neeraj's comments regarding the opposition
No,
making?
he's justifying not registering the offense against the three BJP leaders because Sonia Gandhi is supposed to have said something which I really never heard, and nobody seems to have bothered about it. Whereas here everybody bothers, and in fact, I would say that it must have directly led to the riots. That
No, maybe not this time. Sonia Gandhi may not have said anything this time, but in previous occasions, which I assume Neeraj is referring to, there have been equally provocative statements made by the Congress party.
Well, if there was, they should have been prosecuted. I mean, at least the offense should have been registered. Why didn't they do that? I mean, obviously, because it's a party in power. And if you are going to permit the party in power to do whatever they like, to break the law in this manner, to foment riots, I think that what happens to our country? I mean, it's going to be a chaos. I don't think that it is right to let off these speeches. I really didn't know that Sonia Gandhi had made a speech like that. Obviously, nobody bothered about what she said. I mean, it's quite obvious. Otherwise, it would have been a big furor about it.
Right. But Neeraj, just because in previous occasions, Congress party leaders have made such provocative comments, doesn't mean that these three BJP leaders, I mean, it's not like an eye for an eye, is it?
Well, that is for the local police to take a view whether these statements have directly led to the riots or not. Well, they have taken this decision that they have not. I mean, that Sonia Gandhi's statement or the BJP MP's statements and all have not led to the riots. And therefore, they have excluded these,
But what do you think? What do you think? Do you think that comments like that Anurag Thakur made, ki goli maro, and I cannot say the next word because this is, this is a public audience, but he did make this remark. He admits to having made the remark. Do you think that that was
if you ask me,
above board?
Honest opinion, severe action should have been taken by the party against the minister, against the other people for having made such statements.
Kapil Mishra and Pravesh.
Yes. But none of that happened either. But then that again goes in respect of the other party as well. So there we are. It's a very strange situation. Anyhow, I mean, the point that these statements led to the riots is the moot question. And well, the Delhi police in its wisdom, or as my senior colleague says, out of their whatever, lack of guts or whatever, have chosen not to do it. It is a matter of opinion. It is a matter of, debate and so on and so forth.
Mr. Ribeiro, you wrote 2 letters to the Delhi Police Commissioner, Mr. Srivastav. He replied to one of them where he asked you to give him and the Delhi Police the benefit of doubt. And he said that, nothing was being done. It was not as if Muslims were being picked out and therefore they were being arrested or charge sheeted. Would you agree with his request to you or his statement to you?
You see, I would always want statements to be tested in a court of law if necessary. In this case, of course, there's no question of court of law. But he says that he has been even-handed. But the figures will show. I mean, how many people have been arrested? And I think the figures are quite convincing that they have taken one-sided view and one-sided action. So this is what I very worried about, that you have not been even-handed. So let us see, because these cases are coming up in court. And in court, they'll have to disclose all the evidence they have. That is what I wrote to him. You put up the cases in court and let us see what happens. And let us see the type of evidence you have. So if the evidence is really convincing, even the courts will take that stand. But if not, then you have really done whatever your masters wanted and not as per the law or as per the constitution. And that is not the oath you have taken when you join service.
But who are the masters that you're referring to, Mr. Ribeiro?
The party in power, always. The party in power is the one that makes these kind of requests. And then it is for you to sell your conscience. If you have a conscience, you have to stick by it. Unless you also feel in that way, you bow down to that same ideology. Ideology should not matter to people in service.
Of course.
People in service have to be absolutely neutral and they have to do what they are supposed to do.
Right.
And what the police are supposed to do is to implement the law fairly, squarely, according to the truth.
So my next question to both of you very senior former police officers, and let me ask you, Mr. Ribeiro, first. Do you think that the police force in our country, and I'm talking about two big cities, Delhi and Mumbai, is it being increasingly politicized?
It has been, the process of politicization has started long ago. Even in my time, we could feel it. But we had officers and we had politicians also of different type, different caliber, I would say, a different way of thinking. And they did not really oppose you in case or insist on what they say or what they want. If you told them that this is the law, this is the evidence, how can we ignore it? And that is to happen. I've never had a problem. Whenever I went to the chief minister and explained, in fact, they would in fact come down in their this and agree. And they would not like it, but that is not your job. Your job is to see that the law is enforced. I don't think that this is something I've never seen and never expected also. So this is quite different.
You mean what's happening in Delhi, in the Delhi riots charge sheet? You didn't expect
Delhi riots is a clear indication. In UP, it's much worse, I feel. I mean, and then I think that we should not forget that there is a law, there is a constitution. You have to go by the tenets of that, and this is what people must understand.
What do you think, Neeraj? Is the police force in Delhi especially?
I fully agree with Mr. Ribeiro that yes, there has been more and more politicization of the police and more political interference that they try to do with the police. And he's absolutely right that how much the police yields to that pressure depends upon the leader who's in position, who is leading the force. He can stand up to those pressures or he does not.
What about in your time, Neeraj? What about in your time when you were Commissioner of Police in Delhi? Did you?
Yeah, you are if you recall my various tips with Mr. Shinde when he was the Home Minister, he almost threatened to shoo me out. He threatened that I either resign or he will sack me, he'll send me to BBRND, and all kinds of threats he gave me. And I stood my ground. Mm-hmm. And it was all because he wanted certain postings and transfers, which I could not accept. And that's why he was cut up with me. So if you recall, the Jats, a couple of them got into his compound one afternoon, after which, he came after me. And I had several problems even with Mrs. Sheila Dikshit during the rare days. All that I have put in my book as well, in my second book.
Yeah.
The political skirmishes that I had with these people.
What about you, Mr. Ribeiro? Did you come up with? Did the politicians in your time try to interfere with your work, and did you stand up to them? Give us an example.
There are many examples. I can give you a number of them. This is this question of asking for transfers and postings is a common thing. Once they know you are not going to succumb, I mean, they leave you alone. And I didn't have much problems about that. They did try. They always try when you first take charge. And when they find that they are not going to succeed, they give up. This is at least in Maharashtra. Perhaps in the north, it's a little more aggressive and people feel that they are in charge. I mean, but not as far as transfers and posting, because this is where all the corruption comes in. Not only corruption, you get all sorts of...
But give us an example of the time that you may have stood up to your political masters, Mr. Ribeiro.
Well, in Bombay, I would say that the only time the chief minister, he never asked me for a transfer or posting, but he had pressure from Delhi. And some of the big Congress leaders wanted him to post a certain person as a deputy commissioner in a particular place.
Which Congress leader? Which Congress leader?
I think the person who, the chief minister was Vasant Dada Patil.
Okay.
He never interfered.
Neeraj, it seems to me that it's
quite common.
Right. This political pressure is really common. It happens to everybody. But I just want to bring you both back to the current case of the Delhi police charge sheet. It's a 17,000-page charge sheet, by the way, so it's not very small. But it has 2 or 3 really interesting nuggets, apart from the fact that that these 3 BJP leaders haven't been charge sheeted. There's another very interesting nugget. It talks about the chakka jam that these protesters were using as a weapon, almost. I mean, those words are mine. But they said that this was premeditated, it was pre-planned, and they wanted to engineer a riot, and that's what the chakka jam was for. It was not for a protest, but as a step towards engineering a riot.
Yeah, that is right. Because as per the charge sheet and as per the investigation, there were a group of people. I mean, 15 have been charge sheeted and 6 are yet to be charge sheeted.
Right.
So there will be about 21 of them who, over a period of time, as alleged in the charge sheet, were kind of getting together, conspiring, meeting, making plans.
But isn't chakka jam a tool of protest, a tool of political protest? Why is it become? Why is it in the charge sheet become a tool or a weapon of engineering a riot?
Exactly. I'll just come to it. So they were planning that just like Shaheen Bagh blockade, there would be a blockade at Zafrabad.
Yeah.
And not only Zafrabad, also in the interiors of the adjoining colonies, so that people are unable to take any detours from the highway and come back on the highway bypassing the area which was under blockade. So this was one part of the conspiracy. The idea was that it will put people in so much of inconvenience, that they will be forced to get back at the people who are indulging in the blockade.
But so, isn't this a bit odd for the Delhi police to use a chakka jam as an excuse to arrest 15 people right now, of which, by the way, all of them except for 2 are Muslim?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. Chakka jam was one small part of the conspiracy. The conspiracy was at various different levels. And what were the preparations made, how the rooftops were stored with bricks, with acid, with bombs, with one of them even had a catapult, if you remember, huge catapult which was displayed on TV screens. I think it was on the rooftop of Tahir, that MLA from
Aam Aadmi
Party. Mm-hmm. So this group of people, they were exhorting others to be prepared for action. But there was also such preparation on the other side.
Right.
There was none. So the theory, or shall we say the main purport of the charge sheet is that the conspirators were preparing people to indulge in riots by forcing a confrontation which the blockades will cause, and people will be put to so much of inconvenience that they will attack.
It's odd, isn't it, Mr. Ribeiro, that of the 15 people who have been arrested, except for two girls actually, the rest are all Muslim. I mean, you can argue that, yes, there were only Muslims on the streets protesting, trying to engineer a riot, but surely there were people of all different, I mean, I hate to say that it was, Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs. I mean, I'm Hindu myself, but to say that there were only people of one particular community, Muslims, who were inciting the riots, I mean, that's a bit odd, isn't it?
My own experience in Mumbai, in Gujarat, wherever I've worked, not in Punjab, of course, it was a different proposition, but in the two states that I know very well, I think the numbers are on the side of the Hindus. It's very difficult for the Muslims to engineer anything like that because they are always on the receiving end. It's natural. What the numbers are very, very substantial. So I have seen in Mumbai, wherever there is a chance of a riot or there is some dispute which is going to end in a riot, it's usually the Muslim underworld, because there are a lot of disproportionately large leaders of the underworld in the Muslim community, and they normally help in arming the people, their own co-religionists, in order to prepare for their defense, not for offense, because offense would really wipe them out. And there is, I think, I don't know how the Delhi is the other way around. I'm rather flummoxed about that. The real thing is that numbers are too substantial. I mean, really overwhelming, and it should never happen that way, as is being mentioned by my friend.
Neeraj, what do you think?
Well, in certain pockets, the pockets which saw the riots, the numbers were in favor of the other community.
In favor of Muslims?
Yes. I would refrain from calling them Hindus or Muslims. And even amongst the people who have been charge sheeted, if the police was so partisan, if the police was so pro one religion, then probably all of them would have been from the other religion. And two ladies who belong to Pijra Tod, who belong to the majority, they have been cited as accused.
Yes.
And there are so more cases, sir. I would like to inform you that out of the 740 odd cases that were registered, most of them, 410 if I'm not wrong, were registered on complaints by Muslims. Muslims were the complainants.
That's right. There are more FIRs by Muslims than there are by Hindus. You're right.
There's another interesting thing which has not come into the public domain yet, which I am privy to. If you see the analysis of what are called medico-legal cases reports, which the hospitals prepare whenever an injured person is admitted in hospital, if you analyze it, on the first night, only policemen were the people who were injured. One of them, of course, was killed. The DCP was almost killed. I mean, till today, he has not been able to resume work, as you know. And a large number of other police officers, 118 or so, they were injured, and some of them very, very seriously. On the second day, the people who came to the hospitals were again policemen and people from the majority community. And then comes I think the reprisal comes, and there the numbers are almost all, if not most, are from the minority community.
But Neeraj, you must have seen lots of videos yourself of policemen beating up Muslim boys. So I think to me, it seems as if there's something very seriously wrong with the police force. Would you say that the police force is communalized?
Those acts are indefensible. They happen in different parts of the country at different points of time. Nobody, no police officer, no senior police officer will ever try to even defend them. So those acts, making people sing Janagana Mana or doing this and that, even during the enforcement of the lockdown, the way the police in some pockets of the country resorted to lathi charge, indefensible acts. To enforce the lockdown, you don't have to beat up people the way we saw the police doing on our screens.
So last question.
But at the same time, they are aberrations. Please remember, they are aberrations. There are several such incidents which must have happened over the rioting period. There must have been several other such incidents which happened during the enforcement of the lockdown. By and large, during the enforcement of the lockdown, police has come out in a very positive light all over the country, barring these few incidents in which they were seen using too much force.
So last question to you both. And the question is about how the Special Cell Commissioner in Delhi Police has admittedly made a statement where he says that if you charge sheet too many Hindus, then there will be resentment that breeds in the Hindu community. Mr. Ribeiro, your comments.
And I've already commented about it separately that we never expect officers to show their true colors. They should not come out with such kind of statements. It is not expected of them, and the leader should see that such statements are not made. It always depends upon the top leader. And I think that it is very shameful that he did that, but I suppose he had, I'm not sure, but he might have had too much pressure on him. That also could be, but there is no reason for him, even if there is pressure, to succumb to in this manner and put it down on paper. I mean, what is more, they just put it down on paper. So these are things that nobody can condone. And that is why when I wrote to the police commissioner, Mr. Srivastava, I said, put up the cases in court. I mean, you say that you have the evidence, you have this. So if you have the evidence and they are at fault, well, they must take the responsibility and take the punishment. Right. But if they are not, why keep them in custody? So put it up in the court. And now he has done it with 15. I don't know what he's going to do with the rest. But it's a very unfortunate thing that people are being kept in custody and later on they are released because the courts also realize that this is all cooked up. So, and this is not true. And it just cannot be true. Anyway, so these are all young girls and boys who have been charged in that early 20s, and they are PhD students, MPhil students, and they perhaps have leftist tendencies. So what? Anybody is, even if people have rightist tendencies, how can you stop that? I mean, each one can have their own ideas, but they can't break the law. They can't indulge in violence or preach violence. That's so right. If the police takes even-handed action against all people who talk in the manner that these three stalwarts have done, BJP stalwarts, I think that these things would not have happened.
Last question to you, Mr. Neeraj Kumar. The political pressure that we've been talking about, do you think that the Delhi Police Commissioner, Mr. Srivastava, has perhaps or is perhaps under political pressure? And if he is, what kind of advice would you give him?
My honest answer to you, you may find it hard to believe, and I think my esteemed senior colleague may also find it hard to believe, but he is under no pressure. Delhi Police is in a very comfortable, has always been in a very comfortable position compared to the state police forces. Firstly, the local politicians have nothing to do with us and we have nothing to do with them. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, the Aam Aadmi Party.
But he reports to the BJP. He doesn't report to the Aam Aadmi Party.
Not to BJP. He reports to the Lieutenant Governor, and the Lieutenant Governor reports to the Home Minister.
Center, the Union Home Ministry, right?
Home Minister.
Yeah.
Now, to the best of my knowledge, it is not as if any of these actions that we have been talking about has been taken at the behest of the Honorable Home Minister. This I can assure you, and I can assure you with certain amount of confidence. I can also inform my esteemed senior colleague that charge sheets have been filed, not only the one which was filed yesterday in the omnibus conspiracy case, but charge sheets have also been filed in the majority of the 749 cases that have been registered overall. In a majority of them, the charge sheets have been filed. Mm-hmm. And wherever the police will be at fault, for instance, you may have read that certain FIRs are cut and paste of each other.
Right.
In those cases, again, I hold case for the police if they have acted in such a foolish manner. they must pay for it. Even this circular was in very poor taste. A senior IPS officer should never have issued a circular to which you have referred and to which my Mr.
Right.
Ribeiro has referred. So these are some things which we have to accept.
Yes.
But overall, the impression that has gone that everything is being done at the behest of a certain party or at the behest of the Honorable Home Minister, that I think is misplaced.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Neeraj Kumar. Thank you so much, Mr. Ribeiro. Please do subscribe to the Print's YouTube channel. We have lots of stories for you. It's live and buzzing.